Welcome to Experience Junkies. On this show, I spotlight meeting and event professionals, global travelers, jet setters, and more to relive the moments we never want to forget. More importantly, we'll attempt as best we can to transport listeners to transformational points in our lives, sharing our observations and emotions behind these stories. By diving into the indelible impact these experiences have had on us, we decode small takeaways about how to be better humans than we were yesterday. Hello, Experience Junkies. On this episode, I am joined by Anca Trifan, who is the founder of Trifan Events. During this conversation, Anca shares about her immigrant journey to the U.S. as a young adult over 20 years ago. Fast forward to present day, and Anca now runs her own boutique event agency, specializing in AV and event tech production. This is usually a pretty male-dominated side of the industry. So in our chat, we cover how her career journey has taught her a lot about life and how precious time is. We also discuss what fuels her to go at an Energizer Bunny pace nonstop. So sit back and relax as I chat with Anca Trifan. Welcome back to another episode of the Experience Junkies podcast. Today, I am excited to have with me the lovely Anca Trifan. She is located on the other side of America in lovely Idaho. I think Anca is the only person I know that lives in Idaho, but so happy to have you here for the conversation. Welcome, Anca.
So nice to be here, Diana. I think I'm the only one that lives in Idaho, according to the event industry professional.
Yeah. The way you look at social media, you would think there are no events in Idaho, right?
No events and no event planners in Idaho.
Exactly. Well, with that said, tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, first off, thank you so much for this opportunity to be having a conversation with you on your podcast. I love your episodes and your guests and the energy that you bring to and the flavor that you bring to the event industry. So the more female podcasters out there in this field, the better. That's my take on it. My name is Anca Trifan. As you mentioned, I am the founder of, creator and CEO of Trifan Events, a woman-owned boutique technical event planning and production agency that provides the strategy, technology, and the gear to host successful virtual, hybrid, and in-person events. I have worked in event productions for almost 20 years, and maybe I shouldn't say that out loud because I am still 25. I keep saying that so that I can believe it. And I have an extensive experience and knowledge in the areas of technical event productions, event planning, design, management, and I will happily walk every single one of my clients through the entire event planning and production process because that's where my passion is, and I love to see events that are executed well, events that are thoughtful and that provide some type of an experience. So this is a great podcast to talk about event experiences, right? I am also a certified event professional, digital event strategist, and just recently, which has been literally the cherry on top yesterday, and probably it's not yesterday now that when the episode will be released, but for Women's Day, I was the recipient of the 40 Under 40 Biz Bash and Connect. They co-produced this type of award list for the very first time, and I'm one of those recipients. Amazing people on that list. So I was humbled and honored to be included on that as well. And also the recipient of Women to Watch, an award that I love. My friend Courtney Stanley, she has put out as a way to celebrate women in events. She's done this elevating women on her podcast, Dare to Interrupt, and she just wanted to create this award. And I'm like, thank you. This is
Congratulations.
Fantastic.
You're getting like all these kudos right on,
all in one day. So it was kind
Day.
of hard. Yeah, it was kind of hard to process all at once. And I'm like, I need a moment to just take all of this in. But it was fantastic. It was such a highlight. And I'm also the host of Events Demystified. This is a tactical podcast that dives more into the technology, into the event strategy and event production side of the events. And it is for everyone in the industry, beginner or pro, And I love to have this type of conversation as well with event professionals that have made an impact in the industry. And Deanna actually was one of my guests a little while ago last season. You guys need to go and check it out. That was really one of my top favorite episodes. And I also have this community that I call the Women in Events, Tech and Production, just as a way to elevate and support women in technology and production, which I feel like there is a high need for, especially in male-dominated fields such as AV production. And it is a passion that has been fueled by this deep conviction that I have that there is a need for more women role models in the production event world. I know for myself, I didn't have one, and I would have been so much farther advanced, I truly believe, in my career if I would have had that touch, someone's mentoring me in this journey. Unfortunately, I didn't have that. So it was a lot of the learning on my own and a lot of making my own mistakes, falling and getting back up and retracing my steps and getting back on, right? So there's a lot of resilience that's built through that, but I don't know if necessarily is the best way forward. So if there's a way to make it easier for the new generation moving into event productions, event technology, events in general, I'm all for that. So that's sort of the things that I'm involved with. And another way, which I really love to give back to my community, is by, doing volunteer work, which you're like, how do you still have time for that? Well, I love to see it on boards, and a couple of the boards that are relevant to our conversation are the Idaho Women in Technology, Idaho Nonprofit Center. There is another board called Women Innovators, SheTech, Boys Entrepreneurs Week. And those are the places where I like to hang with, again, like-minded women that are passionate about the same things, elevating girls, women in technology and production fields. So that's really my story in so many words, because I could be talking about this forever, Deanna, but I don't think we have time for it.
Well, you kind of gave me a great segue when you kind of talked about how you started in the career, because you really are like a unicorn in real life. If you follow Anca on any social media channels, you'll see that she's got a ton of pictures with her little unicorn hat on. She really embraces that kind of what do you call it?
Persona.
Alter
persona.
ego. Yeah, persona of a unicorn. But you are, because in the event world, for anyone who doesn't work in events, the AV technical, the production side, any of the event tech platforms and software that is created to support either in-person or virtual events, it's very male dominated. And, especially 20 years ago, as Anca said, when, she was 5 years old and she started working. But my question is, how did you...
Don't ask my parents why that was...
Right. A little bit of child labor. But how did you get involved in, the technical side of events, and what still keeps you working in it all these years later?
I like to go back to my radio days in high school and college. I had the opportunity to start volunteering and then eventually getting on a payroll at one of the local radio stations where I come from. And originally I'm from Romania, if anybody's wondering if that's not, super evident that I have an accent. And back in those days, for me, that was sort of like the catalyst of making it through high school and college without the drama. I have not had any high school drama. There's a lot of things that people would, talk about how hard high school was for them. And I have empathy for that. But for me, I sort of like my, escape has been radio. And I started doing, helping with content and then helping them just set up and things. And then eventually ended up having 3 shows on the radio as a host. But what really stayed with me and captured really a lot of my attention, and that was super fun. I mean, I think I should have started podcasting way in the days, because maybe who knows where I'd be now, like Joe Rogan or something. But again, that wasn't really part of my journey. in the radio station, in the studio, we had this little mixer, and I think it was like a Mackie 1202 or 1404. I don't remember exactly the model, but it's like it had between 2 and 4 channels, analog. And I remember playing with that little thing a lot. Like I would constantly change my voice and my timbre and just constantly cueing things, and probably people thinking on the other side is like, why does she sound different every single time? I don't understand. So when I moved to US, after college, I knew that radio was not going to be one of my pathways, just because at the time I was super insecure about my accent. Also, it's like, sort of impossible to actually get a gig in radio. And I had no connections. I knew no one. So I just came to US with like literally $150 in my pocket to make my own path, like really living the American dream. It's the country that, the place and the world of all possibilities come true. I don't know how true that still is, but that was really how, the belief that I had at the time. And I think it is, if you work hard and if you really follow your dreams and don't get sidetracked and you stay focused on that goal, it's possible, right? The next best place for me that I could come up with, okay, well, I really liked the soundboard. How about I go and learn more about that? So I started pursuing education in sound engineering, and then working from literally the ground up at a production house in LA. And I was hired to literally help them with their computers because I had a computer science degree. It was nothing connected to audiovisual production because I had no knowledge about that just yet, right? But that was the best opportunity for me to actually get hands-on on the gear. And I worked my way from like literally coiling cables and learning the difference between, audio cables and video cables and data cables and lighting cables, DMX and all those things, and learning equipment as well, because I started being in charge of the warehouse. And I'm very organized as a person. I'm also a go-getter. I don't wait for people to tell me what to do. I will find things to do and just go and get them done. So that really helped, put me on the right path to advance in my career in ways that, a passive person probably would have not had the opportunity because it fast forwarded me. And so in a few years time, I ended up getting a degree in sound engineering, lighting design, and then hands-on starting to mix, from an A2 to an A1, a lot of acts, bands. We did a lot of live sound reinforcement for concerts and fashion shows, and a lot of fun stuff, a lot of hard work as well. I mean, I am 5'2", even though I look so tall on Zoom. I don't. But to lift 80 pounds, 70 pounds, like anywhere between 50 to 100 pound speakers, like heavy speakers, it's a lot of weight for a small girl like me, right? So it was heavy, not just in the sense of like mental and emotional, but also physical work. So even to this day, for me to keep myself in top shape, I work out like a maniac so I can have the brute force to be able to do some of the things in the world, in the real world when I'm hands-on, so I don't lose my energy. I don't, fall, dead after, 10 hours on an event day, even though most event days are literally like 16, 18 hours. Just my last hybrid event last Friday, I was on my feet for 18 hours, and that's just very normal in events. But
give the audience a little bit of a taste, like what it is like behind the scenes, especially from the AV tech setup, because a lot of people don't normally see the behind the scenes for that. It's very, back of house typically.
Exactly. I mean, you show up at 5 a.m. with the truck and the loading happens, and you've got to, all the equipment has to be pushed into the ballroom, especially if you're bringing in an outside suppliers. And even if you're not, because I am so hands-on, I don't have to be so much anymore, because now I take the role of the technical event planner and I hire production houses to do a lot of the work, and they would bring in a crew of people. But I used to be one of those people for many years that I would unload the truck and then I push the cases up into the ballroom, and then we start setting up the event, and then you go through all the technical rehearsals, and then you have the event. But guess what? That's not over. Once the event is done, you're going to stay another 6 hours to actually strike that and make sure that everything gets back organized in an organized fashion, at least, back into the truck. So when you get to the warehouse and you pull all that equipment is ready to go to the next show. And there is a system and there is a logistics behind a lot of the AV production houses, how they run, events, especially for you to be successful in that business. You have to have a procedure. You have to have a system and a process in which you follow it so that you don't break your shit on this event. So then when the next one is tomorrow, you literally don't have your gear in top shape. So like even having time to go back through your equipment and say, okay, so this needs fixing, this needs replacing. Okay, we need to reset this or whatever. All those things have to happen. So that's why like during busy time seasons, it's very common for AV professionals to work long hours, day in and day out. So going back to my California, LA days in production, I've done that for about 7 years, and I burned out really, really well because I had no time off. I was working 7 days a week for months. We had a little bit of downtime during, I think in that season, it was during springtime. And it's funny because there's a lot of seasonality to our work based on the type of events that we do, because we did a lot of outside events. We worked very heavy during the summer. We also had holidays during the winter. I was always working in December for holiday parties, and New Year's has always been a work day for me. It was never like just, celebration. And that was for 7 years straight. It's very common for people in this field to not have a life. Like the only life you have is when you go and take a nap. And I would sleep, I kid you not. I mean, I have stories where I would sleep, take naps anywhere I could. I mean, if it was pipe and drape, I would sleep on a pipe and drape bed. If it was like under the tack table, I would sleep there. If it was like on a truss, I slept on a truss too. I mean, I would just find places to rest because you had no time to just move from next thing to the next. So that was the life. And then eventually when it was time to start a family, I was like, okay, well, I can't maintain this. This is way too much. I've got to do something, change something, because I remember like we had a huge show in Vegas at the Las Vegas Convention Center, and we were setting up for a trade show, and it was miles and miles of truss and miles of DMX cables and LEDs and lighting that needed to be pre-programmed before the show. And we were at the time serving our client, which was Cristiano Digier, rest in peace, because he's no longer with us. And he had a huge fashion show at the time in Vegas, and we needed to have all the booths. Each booth was a different brand, and we need to have all of them ready to go. And I remember that we worked day in and day out for 2 days straight. And the night prior to the opening, the start of the show, we had a lot of issues. And this is back in the days when DMX mattered. If you're connecting, it wasn't wireless DMX. You had to do cables, and it mattered which direction you're going in. And apparently some of the labor that we used was freelance, and they messed up the cables. So at one point that we're going in this direction, and then things got switched, and then they started coming in the wrong direction. But we didn't know where the problem was. We didn't know where the nod was happening, and why were we having such issues where our fixtures were not responding to the addressing that we were giving it. So it was just like a long night. And that night I remember like breaking. Like this was like the time when I was like, I can no longer do this. I'm like, I am so exhausted that I can't even remember my name. Like I don't even remember like if it's like 1, 2, 3, 4 or 1, 5, 7, 9. Like I can't even count anymore, right? So this was where like, you think you have, labor unions, and you think you have all those things where like, well, you can only work for 2 hours, and then you take a break, and then you work another 2 hours. No, in most cases, there is no such thing. Like, yes, we all want to rest and we want to take care of our people. But when the tire meets the road and you've got a deadline and you've got a time when you have to be on, you're going to work no matter how many hours that is to figure out the problem, troubleshoot, and solve it. So that was like one of those experiences where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I am going to kill myself like doing this right now, because I am exhausted beyond belief. I don't know when was the last time I ate. I don't know when I drank water, and my body is like failing me. Like I can't function. And that was like also the moment when I was like, okay, I need to figure out a different place. I need a break. I really need a break. I can't keep doing this. So that was my transition into corporate events. And corporate is so different. Corporate is a little bit more, in a sense, elevated, that you don't have to do such hard hands-on work. There's still a lot of hard work, but it's cleaner in a sense that you're not down in the, mud, pulling cables and pushing cases and shoving things, through rain and winter and everything, right? Lightning strikes, who cares? You got to get to the venue, from the truck to the venue. So AV in a venue is a little different. It's also a different level, as far as, not as intense. And, it took me a minute to transition because I had that rock star type of mentality and rock star attitude, and I'm dressing whatever the heck I want, but now I'm in a ballroom with CEOs and C-level executives, and I better learn how to present myself, and I better learn how to talk to them and not be like, this, rugged tech that only speaks tech and I can't speak English as to actually carry a conversation. So I remember it was like a year where I'm like, oh my gosh, who is this person that I'm turning into? Because it does not look like anything that I've known, But it was a really good transition long term because it set me on the path to be with the right people in the right places at the right tables so that I can start my own agency and then make connections with event planners and organizers, which otherwise I would have never had the opportunity to, because as a tech, as a sound engineer, as a lighting technician, you don't really have that interface with the clients, but becoming the technical event planner that I transitioned into in the corporate world, I started interacting with clients. I started actually having strategy conversations and meetings about the events that we were working on. It wasn't just technical. It was more than that, right? There is a plan, there is a why, there is a system to the madness. So in so many words, that's sort of like my journey really into doing it all, both on the vendor side, supplier side, but also on the planner side, turning it around, becoming a certified event professional, meeting professional, because I wanted to actually know more than just the tech. I wanted to know the strategy. I wanted to know what does it take to actually put on a sound event that involves every aspect of the event, not just the production and technology. I'm still very passionate about just production and technology. If you ask me, in the events that I do now, if I have to bring an event planner that does just the event planning part of the event, I will gladly do it, because that's just not something that I'm passionate about. I want to do the gear part. I want to do the production. I want to do the logistics, and that's really where my heart is at. But it's good to know each side of the event so that way where problems could arise before they even arise. And I think that is a level of knowledge and expertise that not a lot of people without experience have. And that's where, the response to that potential problem then is much quicker, so that it doesn't turn into a catastrophic issue, right? So it's important to have that type of hands-on knowledge, and that's where you see the difference between more of a beginner event professional versus someone that it's a veteran that has been through a few things, has had a few things go wrong under their watch, and they know how to avoid that from ever happening again.
So kind of when you were talking about, you like to just kind of do it all, right? You don't like to just focus on the planning, you'll do it, but you want to be involved in all the nitty-gritty details and logistics. And I have to say that Anca has definitely an Energizer Bunny persona. Anca has a million projects, as she mentioned at the beginning of this episode, in terms of, running her own, boutique event agency, volunteering. She, I believe you are preparing for like a fitness competition too. Like, you do it all. And so my question is, where do you get the drive? Where does that come from to just kind of go and have all these projects going? Like, is it like a fear of failure, a passion for the work? Maybe your background as an immigrant. Where do you think that stems from?
I love that question because it goes into, the why behind the things that we do. And I'm a huge personality type kind of person that I will go and do all the personality types because I want to learn more about myself and then also learn more about the other people that I interact with. I'm on all on all of those. I'm like, talk to me about Myers-Briggs, DISC, Enneagram. I mean, all of it, all the things. I think for me to answer that question, honestly, I failed so much in my life, and I'm not even like afraid to admit it, because I failed on small things and large things. That fear of failure no longer drives me or scares me. And yeah, sure, it's not fun to fail for sure. But I feel that I allowed myself to ride through the lows and the highs enough to know what that is like, so I'm no longer afraid of it, right? So what really, really drives me is a passion for doing something that's meaningful, something that I can say I put my heart and my soul into, something I can look back on and be proud of what I have contributed to with my life. I could not be the kind of person that watches Netflix for hours. I tried, it doesn't work for me, or gets lost in like Instagram reels and TikToks. That's again not me. I have such an ingrained sense of like wasting time that I don't have, that is just something that it's not a fantasy of mine to just be a couch potato. It's never been. Like for me, being and doing, it's what I'm all about, right? It's what gives me energy. Things that actually make me be still and breaks and rest depletes me of energy. And that's like when I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta do something. Like being sick is like the worst thing that could happen to me, because I'm like, I can't even rest because I want to do a million other things. And I'm like, this thing is in the way right now. And I can't even, it's like allowing myself to rest has been a journey for myself, just to learn how to do it well in a way, because I need to also have the moments of like stillness and time that I allow myself to to breathe through all those things. Knowing, honestly, how short life is and how I care to leave something behind, either for my children or for the world, it doesn't matter. I just have that drive that comes from like how many projects I have, and I have so many that they're on the list, but I haven't yet started yet. I cannot live this life before I've done them all. And that's what really drives me, the urgency of how time is such a precious resource, and we only have so little of it.
Yeah. What you said that struck me there was doing brings you energy. And I think it just kind of underlines that you need a purpose. You need like a North Star behind, when you're setting about your day, what is the goal that I want to attempt? And when I'm working on this project, what's the overarching purpose of this project and how is it impacting, others? I love that you also run AV during church services, so that you can kind of use your expertise in that service capacity. How do you separate the technical side of what you're doing from like the spiritual side, of praise and worship in the moment? I grew up in the church, and I know sometimes when you're in that moment and you're feeling very connected with, the service that's going on, you kind of get lost in your emotions. So how do you run a soundboard and kind of be a tech lead in those moments?
That's a great question. And if you ask any house of worship technician or sound engineer or any tech role that they might feel during a service that is also a believer, that's also a great struggle because when you're in those positions, you are there to do a task and a job and focus on it, and you don't receive much. You really give a lot of your talent, skills, expertise for the good of the service, the community, whatever it is that your heart is into and you're involved with. I have in the past been burned out by mixing and working behind the scenes every Sunday for years in a row as well. Again, when I pour myself into something, I feel like it's sometimes to my disadvantage that I do it so wholeheartedly and with so much passion that I give it all, and there is no holding back. But because I do that, if it's poured out at the same level week after week, in time, if I'm not careful, if I do not put boundaries around this, I get burned out. And it has happened to me. And that's where actually my biggest growth has happened, learning how to allow myself to have boundaries around even like the passion that I have and the places that I involve myself with and the things that I pour myself into. So with that being said, the way I've learned to, contain some of it while I still volunteer on Sundays is figure out a schedule in which, because after I got burned after like several years of working day in and day out every Sunday, and the first person to leave, and we're talking about 3 services in a row in the morning and another service in the evening. I mean, this is like a full-time job.
On top of your job, your actual job.
On top of your job, but then you also have rehearsals and you have meetings during the week. So it's not just like one day, right? There's a lot of time. Like for everyone that is working behind the scenes in a house of worship, I mean, I salute you. And I have a good friend that she is involved with sound engineering for houses of worship. And she gets it because that's exactly what that takes, a lot of pouring out of yourself, like selfless, So I guess for me, what has been the strategy of late is I volunteer maximum twice a month, so I can keep 2-3 times a month free, so that when I go to church, so I can actually receive something and not just be there as a, constantly doing something. But also I don't want to be a spectator either, right? I want to contribute, but I have to do it in a way that I don't burn myself out, because I can put myself in every single role every single Sunday, and I have done that in the past, but it has not served me well in the long term, because if I take myself out after several months, then I can't help anymore. So it's not helpful to anyone,
Exactly.
So I had to learn how to create that boundary around it.
Yeah, and even outside of church, I know that you work with, some charitable organizations, some volunteer. I saw that you even did like a memorial service, a virtual memorial service for someone. And when you're in those moments where you, again, from this same aspect of being, a church member and being the soundboard person, but on the flip side, when you're actually in your event role, but it's something that's a good cause and it may have a little bit of, tearjerker, have you ever become overwhelmed or emotional actually managing a live virtual event?
I honestly, I try to stay focused on the task, and I've done actually several celebration of lives, which are funerals, memorials. I personally, I know though it sounds like bad or I enjoy those. Not that I enjoy that somebody passed away, but I enjoy being in the moment with the person that is like one of my biggest clients right now is someone that I have done a memorial for her mother. And the fact that I was there as not just as a taskmaster to do something for her, but as a supporter in those moments. And that's where like emotionally I can connect with people on a deeper level, because honestly, I want to be there for the moments of joy, but I also want to be there for the moments of sadness. Because if I walk with you through highs and lows, then we really have established a rapport. And I'm the kind of person that I can really embrace the sadness as much as I can embrace the joy of life, because they're just two sides of the same coin, right? So someone that will be with you through those moments of of greatest need, because I feel like funerals and celebration of lives, those are the places where most people are like, I don't want to go because it's it's sad, it's depressing, it's oppressive sometimes. But those are the moments when you show up, you really show up for someone, and that really, really matters. So to your question, I've had events, especially any event that is related to children suffering, that touches my heart on a level that I'm not a crier in general. Like it takes me a whole month to collect enough tears so that at a certain time of the month, I can just unleash it all for one day. So when it comes to crying, just like sometimes I'm mad at myself that I can use crying as, as a manipulation strategy with my husband, because it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wish I could be like, come on, you really want to show that you really, really, are so upset about this one thing. And I'm like, I can't even cry. Like, this This is frustrating. So on events, when it's something that has to do with a cause that supports children in poverty, children suffering with a disease, cancer, or children that are mistreated or are abused or are trafficked in any way, shape, or form. That's when I'll be the tech that really cries. Like, it's like there's tears coming down, and I'm like trying to hold it because I just can't. Like, that breaks my heart on a level that I just can't even express. And I feel in so many ways it goes back to my own childhood, feeling like I wanted to be someone that was protected, and instead I had to grow up beyond my age, and I needed to become this tough, cookie just to make it through some seasons of my life. And childhood was stolen from me in that sense, So like going back into those moments when I allow myself to be so vulnerable that it's almost like I can identify with that child was me like many years ago, and I never allowed that child to actually really suffer because that child had to toughen up. That child actually had to make it happen and grow beyond their means to just survive, So those are definitely the places that I'll be like, just, letting it all out.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, you kind of mentioned, your immigration story and some of the hardships that you dealt with as a young child or young adult. And, if you could go back and talk to, young Anca, either before you left Romania or, after you came to the U.S., like looking on your journey of where you sit today, what would you tell young Anca? What advice would you give her?
That's a hard question, but it's a great question. I allow myself once a year those moments of introspection to go back.
Yeah, and those moments in between all of your different projects, right? When you've got like 20 seconds to yourself.
Basically, yeah. So I guess young Anca has always been driven to accomplish something in her life. And with that, patience has never been my strongest suit. Because of it, young Anca made plenty of mistakes because she jumped into things before she was ready for them, or before the timing was right, because again of her impatience with life and life seasons. So I guess what I would tell myself, if I had the opportunity to just slow down and enjoy the ride and trust that everything will fall into place just right at the right time for the right reasons. And there's no need to try so hard to force things to happen when it's not their turn yet. And that applies to relationships and projects and pretty much all across the board. And I've had to learn that the hard way, many times. And even recently, just through COVID. I mean, COVID was definitely a hard blow to everyone's life, but especially people that have little patience for waiting around for things to happen. That has been definitely a life lesson that I can look back and have some takeaways, but apply those so that I'm stronger because of the lessons learned,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this has been a great conversation. I've enjoyed having you on today, Anca. Before we wrap up, there's one question that I do ask every guest on the show, so hopefully this doesn't catch you by surprise. But if you had to pick a song to kind of convey this conversation, your journey as an event tech, your journey from Romania to the U.S., your journey at becoming a woman, what would that song be and why?
This is a great question. Actually, it made me think a little bit. I have a huge collection of songs that speak to me at different seasons through my life. I build topical playlist in my Spotify playlist based on a particular week. Like if I'm struggling with something, that playlist, you better believe it that it's going to elevate me and it's going to like boost me and it's going to get me going for, to accomplish whatever it is that I need to accomplish that week. So with that being said, I also listen a whole lot to Muse. And if anybody's not familiar with Muse, but they've been around forever and they're a UK band. I love them. And, you probably, I don't know if you're familiar with the songs, but if you have listened to, the things that I've said, patience is not necessarily my greatest suit. So with that, one of their songs that speaks to me is Time is Running Out. And
Very appropriate, Anca, very appropriate.
Very appropriate, yes. So it has a really good beat, a really good groove, and it just gets me going. And I'm telling you, when I'm at the gym and I put my Muse playlist on, I can do 40 pull-ups, and not get, sidetracked because that energy like literally takes me to the next level. So that's my go-to playlist.
Awesome.
Time is running out. I wish I had it ready to play it.
I know. We'll add it to our Spotify playlist. We do have a Spotify playlist for all of our guest song selections, so definitely check that out. But before we leave off of here today, Anca, please tell everyone where they can find you on the interwebs.
The best way to connect with me, I would say there's LinkedIn, where I professionally connect with like-minded event professionals and event planners and people that are on the same bandwidth with, the things that I do. And I love following inspirational people. And Diana, I love your reels and I love, your video tidbits that are just so hilarious. And that brings me, a laughter on my face and joy. So those are the people that, I would follow on LinkedIn. So that's where the connection is, where I would say you could connect with me. Now, on a more professional but also personal behind the scenes level, I would go to Instagram. Trifan_events is where I do the posts are all about the event. Stories and the reels are all behind the scenes. So when you want to see, Anca, professional Anca, that's on the post on the page. But if you want to see a little bit peek behind, my life and my story and my journey, that's going to be in the stories. So those are probably the best places. Obviously, I have a website. I have a website for the company. I have a website for my podcast, Events Demystified. And those are all places that will lead you to those websites as well if you're there.
Perfect. Well, we'll have all of those links in the show notes so listeners can find you wherever you are online. And with that, I want to say thank you so much for being with us, Anca. This has been great. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Experience Junkies podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Apple or Spotify so that other listeners can find the show. Be sure to join our Discord channel. This is a great place for you to give feedback, talk with me, talk with our guests and other listeners, and share your Experience Junkie tales. Thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day.